Hey everybody, welcome! You are in the WhirlOmar, and this is a two-part video on what the f was that? Did you just feel that? I still feel it again. Okay, what's happening? The gatekeepers.
The gatekeepers, the ones with the keys to mass media.
This is hilarious. I don't get it. I mean, I think this is not going to work. I'm sorry. I mean, I like it, but it just, I don't know how to sell it. I don't know what to make of it. Actually, I remember, I mean, I love it. I really love this. It's just there's no way I could sell it. I mean, it's too different from what what we already have, you know. So I'm sorry, the audience is not going to go for this. Sorry. I'm sorry. Why are you crying? Don't cry about it. There's no need to cry about it.
I don't care, get out of here. No.
Wait. Poor guy. But this scenario has always been happening in our media, thanks to the gatekeepers. Those are the ones who have the control of what gets distributed out to the public and what doesn't. Some people feel this is a self-interested censorship. The internet has diminished the power of gatekeepers, but which at the moment is in danger, which could give the gatekeepers back their almighty power. But I still worry about those great works never seeing the light of day. What voices, what geniuses have been lost in the 20th century thanks to this system? Because what's not familiar is too original for the public to grasp. No? Is it? I mean, they won't buy into it. Just too different. You know, when something's too different, most people don't relate. When a true genius appears in the world, you can know him by this sign: that all the dunces are in confederacy against him. That's the epigraph at the introduction of one of my favorite books. It also inspired the title, The Confederacy of Dunces by the late John Kennedy Toole. Now here's a story of a writer who fell into madness because his book was unsellable, as the publishing house editor kept telling him. And this went on and on and on and on. The poor guy ended up sticking one end of a garden hose into the car's exhaust pipe and the other end back to the driver's seat and sucked in the carbon monoxide as he bid farewell to a world that cannot understand his masterpiece. Later, his grief-stricken but determined mother, with her son's manuscript in one hand and a raised fist in the other, peddled it around for years until it was ultimately published, which afterwards won the author a posthumous Pulitzer Prize and also was translated into somewhere around 24 languages. There have been many observations when it comes to the case that originality doesn't really exist. Writer T.S. Eliot once said, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal," which in itself is a phrase nearly copied from famous painter Picasso saying, "Talent imitates, genius steals, meaning that talent recreates other great works and genius takes it for himself and turns it into something else. And of course, many interpretations of the same quote have been repeated over and over and over. Doing what others find difficult is talent. Doing what is impossible for talent is genius. As quoted by Swiss philosopher and poet Henry Frederick Amiel. So it's not where you take it from, but where you take it to. Filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard said so. And German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer strongly believed that talent has a target no one can hit. Genius hits a target no one else sees. Genius. There's that word again. Is genius originality? Some consider Steve Jobs a genius because of his innovative insight to making the computer graphical interface, the icons, the mouse. Steve Jobs did not invent the home computer, but he turned the idea of making computers usable by people who didn't know anything about computers. At first, for some reason, it wasn't working out. Could it be that maybe that originality was too unrecognizable? But Bill Gates came along and made a fortune with his Windows environment, which is basically the same idea that Steve Jobs had. Eventually, Steve Jobs and Apple came back around, and they succeeded with more innovations that brought computing to mobile devices and beyond. As John Kay notes, talent frequently makes money. Genius changes the world. He also says Bill Gates will be remembered for his fortune and his problem solving, while Steve Jobs will be remembered for his genius. And so goes it for the small confederacy of geniuses. Walt Disney turned a 2D animation studio into a huge entertainment amusement park complex, though Disney was inspired by Coney Island in New York City and the Tivoli Gardens in Europe. And Jim Henson turned a part of puppet tradition into an entertainment commercial enterprise. So I guess one can't be completely original. It's the gathering of previous ideas and formulating something new. It's about combining relationships. Like one example would be adding the extraordinary into the ordinary. That's one of the elements that made the Steven Spielberg film so refreshing and entertaining. It's connecting those relationships that's considered creativity. And its innate ability is what's recognized as talent. But when a great idea strikes and changes the world, that's what people like to call a genius. So, then is genius originality? I don't know. Well, then perhaps if that's not the closest one would get to originality because the term is being used in more ways than one, then I guess the word itself is not really original. So, how would you define originality? There's just too many quotes here. I can't deal with this. Could you deal with this?